United States has not been involved in any offensive operations. What we're focused on, what the G7 is focused on, and again, it's reflected in our statement and in our conversation, is our work to de-escalate tensions, to de-escalate from any potential conflict. You saw Israel on the receiving end of an unprecedented attack, but our focus has been on, of course, making sure that Israel can effectively defend itself, but also de-escalating tensions, avoiding conflict, and that remains our focus. First, the G7 condemned the unprecedented Iranian attack on Israel, unprecedented in scope and scale. Scope because it was a direct attack on Israel from Iran, scale because it involved more than 300 munitions, including ballistic missiles. We're committed to Israel's security. We're also committed to de-escalating, to trying to bring this tension to a close. You saw as well, or you'll see soon in the G7 statement, a commitment to hold Iran to account for its destabilizing activities, holding it to account by degrading its missile and drone capabilities. And yesterday, the United States announced additional sanctions on Iran, targeting UAV programs, the steel industry, companies that are associated with the IRGC, the Ministry of Defense, and its armed forces logistics. The G7 statement makes clear that G7 countries will adopt additional sanctions or other measures in the days ahead.
U.S. President Joe Biden and other leaders of the G7 nations condemned Iran's attack on Israel on Sunday, saying it risked provoking an uncontrollable regional escalation. A White House official said Biden warned Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that the U.S. will not take part in a counteroffensive against Iran if Israel decides to retaliate after Iran launched an overnight barrage of missiles and drones on Israeli territory. Meanwhile, Netanyahu reconvened a war cabinet meeting in Tel Aviv to discuss a response to the drone and missile attack. War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz warned that Israel would, quote, exact the price from Iran in a fashion and timing that is right for us. Iran's armed forces chief said the operation was considered successful and, quote, deemed the matter concluded. But Iran warned Israel and the U.S. that a retaliation to its overnight attack would elicit a far bigger response. The Israeli army released footage on Sunday that it said showed its fighter jets intercepting unmanned aerial vehicles and cruise missiles launched from Iran. The more than 300 missiles and drones, mostly launched from inside Iran, caused only modest damage in Israel, as most were shot down with the help of the U.S., the U.K., and Jordan. An Air Force base in southern Israel was hit but continued to operate as normal, and a 7-year-old child was seriously hurt by shrapnel. There were no other reports of injuries or serious damage. Despite the minimal damage, Barbara Slavin, a distinguished Middle East fellow at the Stimson Center, called the attack on Israel a paradigm shift.
The shadow war between Israel and Iran is now out in the open. But given that, Iran did it in a very calibrated way, sending these slow drones, hours and hours flying from Iran to Israel, giving plenty of time for the Israelis and the United States and others to prepare. I mean, even the Jordanians shot down a bunch of these drones as they went over Jordanian airspace. Thank God no one was killed. It doesn't appear that there was very much damage. So it was kind of performative, but it was nevertheless a paradigm shift because it was a direct Iranian retaliation on Israel for Israeli attacks on Iranians.
Iran's attack was over a suspected Israeli strike on its consulate in Syria that killed top military commanders. It also followed months of clashes between Israel and Iran's regional allies, triggered by the war in Gaza. The threat of open warfare erupting between Iran and Israel and dragging the United States into it has put the region on edge. It also triggered calls for restraint to avoid further escalation from global powers including Russia, China, France, and Germany, as well as Arab nations Egypt, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. Turkey also warned Iran it did not want further tension in the region.
Well, this is still a developing situation. What we know is that Iran's semi-official state media said that blasts were heard over the central city of Isfahan in the northwest part of the city. Now, Iran has activated its defense system. There are also commercial flights that diverted from western Iran while this was happening. We have these applications that show the air alarms going off, and several air alarms did go off in the north of Israel this morning. It's unclear if they were false alarm or not, but Israel could be on high alert right now because Iran had said that if Israel hits it back, it said that it's going to strike Israel harshly and quickly. Don't know what these alarms were in relation to or if this has anything to do with the strike this morning. It's still very early morning here. It's about 7 o'clock, and we just got news a few hours ago, so people are still waking up. But there was a poll a few days ago by Hebrew University that asked Israelis how they felt if Israel were to respond to Iran, and 74% of Israelis said that if it was going to jeopardize their alliances with their allies and jeopardize their security, that they were not in favor of a response.
We know that the threat is there, it's still there. The Iranians are capable to shoot to Israel missiles and UAVs and cruise missiles, and this is exactly what we are preparing ourselves, as I said, for a very long time. And we have to say that it is us together with the CENTCOM and the coalition which is around us, which is something very significant for the defense of Israel. Again, together with our allies, mainly with the United States, but also from other countries, we feel that we have the needed supply today in order to deal with whatever it's needed, and it is something that is continuously being built. And but as everything that you need to manage during a war, supply of missiles and ammunition, this is of course one important part of it. Israel is operating all the relevant system, which is, air defense. It's always a challenge for the Israeli pilots, but then from the other end, this is something that we know how to deal with. I wouldn't get into the operational, the operational and relevant way of doing things. But this is what the Israeli Air Force and the Israeli pilots were training themselves for years and years, and we feel quite confident that if something would be needed to do, we know how to do it. Specific, again, this is a political issue. I'm a military personnel, but as a military personnel, I can tell you that shipments and so on. So the Iranians are there as a threat. The decision if to fight, to shoot 1, 2, or 3, this is a decision that is being made according to the threat, according to the decision of the Israeli C2, which is the command post, and of course the operators of the system. They would make the decision in real time how much they have to shoot, what are the relevant heights according to the threat.
Hey, Bernie.